On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1978. We're going to be taking a look at AC/DC, and they're going to be performing Let There Be Rock. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, now and again in the comments section, I get somebody asking why I don't have a proper video on AC/DC, and the reason for that is because their videos get blocked instantly. So, it means that I can't look at any of the playing or Angus playing and break it down because you won't be able to hear what I'm referring to. So, in this video, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. There's going to be a link to the video that I'm going to be watching in the description below, so you guys can watch that the whole way through if you want to. But I am going to be taking sections of rhythm guitar and lead guitar, so we can have a little look at what Malcolm's playing as well. And hopefully these sections will be small enough as to just to refer to them, but not to get a copyright block, and hopefully it's going to work that way. We will see. I'm going to watch the video now, and then it will skip to the first thing that I'm going to point out. So the first thing that I'm going to be pointing out is the guitar from the rhythm perspective, and the fact that Malcolm and Angus are playing similar things here. It's just the way that they're strumming that does change, or it's different between the two of them. So Malcolm is playing with that, and let me just, I've got quite a heavy tone here, so I'm going to take a little bit off in order to get a similar kind of tone. This is the thing about AC/DC as well, just tone for days, and they get such a full sound with the rhythm, with Malcolm behind, Angus just supplying that perfect backing, and they are super tight here, by the way. And I think pretty much this is one of those performances that made people think of quantizing because it's so spot on. These are the guys that you listen to in order to get a real solid live performance, as this is. But getting into the rhythm, we've got these open strings. So it means that we're going from that G, and that's going to be our approach. And when we look at Malcolm in the video, we get this. So he's very much letting those strings ring out like that, sometimes throwing in a little upstroke. And you don't hear the G string, that first finger on the first fret, the G string, to hear that major chord, the E major. You don't hear that all that much. It does pop in there now and again, so either Malcolm or Angus are playing that, but generally you'll just hear the fifth, so it means that you can be a little bit lazy with your third finger, and we get this. So here, hopefully you can notice that. That's more of a power chord, a fifth sound, rather than having that G string nice and open in there. You want to just lean on it a little bit. Like that, so it's muted. So we have that. And if you're trying to play this jumping to all of the chord shapes, then you're probably going to struggle because these are just simplified shapes. We're starting with the G, effectively, but just playing those first or middle strings. So the D, the G, and the B together, and then placing on that E. And this little squash down of the third finger to give us our A. And then we have a little hop back to that E. So that's going in slow motion. Like that. So we are jumping to those open strings quite regularly. The difference between Malcolm and Angus from a rhythm perspective here is that Angus is just letting the strings ring out more. So it's going to be filling in all of that space, and Malcolm's throwing in a little bit more strumming. So it means that Angus's guitar is going just like that. So it's a little bit more simplified, but this is the thing, they're both playing the same shapes, so you really do get that wall of sound from the guitars, but they're just changing the strumming between the two of them rather than just both doing the same thing, just to separate it up just a bit. So I'm just going to jump into the video again. So just getting into this section where we get into the A, and we've got this, and it's just, you can do 2 downstrokes if you want to, get a little bit more attitude in there with the palm mute. And what we have in that is a groove. You can feel the groove in there, and when Malcolm's playing this, you sometimes hear this a little bit of those strings that are muted getting hit, because he's continuing that rhythm on, getting into that groove of just downstrokes, upstrokes, the like that. So you can really lock into that, even though you can only hear, we're only emphasizing 2 strums on that A, you can still hear that underlying groove. Let me just mention about Phil Rudd on drums here. So solid the whole way through, like I said. It sounds quantized because it is so solid. And Cliff Williams on bass. They are such a tight unit here. So they've got that solid foundation to then build on top of. But getting into the first bit of lead here, we've got a really tough job here trying to get anywhere close to Angus, because he's one of those lead guitarists who plays with feel and expression and just gets into his playing. It's not always perfectly played, but that's the point, that he's just throwing lines together as he feels like doing at that particular millisecond in time. So then trying to get it anywhere close is very, very difficult, is impossible. So when we start off, the start of this solo is a great example of it, because we've got this kind of, it looks like he's sliding down and giving a little bend of the string, again really loosely phrased, and then we get this line that we're in our A minor pentatonic shape here, but that little line I'll play again, and the vibrato. Listen to the way that he just throws that vibrato in there, and it is so unique, but it's consistent the whole way through. He always has this excitable sound to his vibrato. It's very fast, and he doesn't cover a lot of pitch in terms of having a wider vibrato and a slower vibrato like that. You're covering more notes like that, whereas with Angus's vibrato, it's not covering very much pitch, and that is the speed when it's added in is going to make it sound more energetic and excitable, as he certainly is when he plays on stage. And we have these classic blues lines that are in there, that kind of thing, with the vibrato in there as well. And when he's throwing in those lines, we also get into that kind of thing where he's throwing in some of these classic blues lines. I will just play the video on a little bit so we can hopefully hear it without getting blocked. So straight away there, we've got that little bends with that first finger just pinching down. Another really important thing to look at when we've got Angus's right hand just taking up all of the screen is the right hand with his downstrokes. He puts in a lot more downstrokes than you might imagine, because, for example, if you are playing this phrase that he's just gone through there, you might want to do that with a down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Playing that again. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. Kind of like that. But the amount of downstrokes that Angus puts in, he really goes for it aggressively by favouring the downstrokes rather than the alternate picking. Let me see if we stay on the right hand for any length of time here. So we didn't stay on it for very long, but when you do watch this performance, look out for that right hand, and there we... We're then moving up to now B, if you're wanting to play along or at least keep this in key when you're just practicing a little bit of your minor pentatonic shapes, but also just that aggressiveness with the downstrokes means that he gets a little bit more of a run up to the string. Could be really aggressive with it, and like I said, he's not being exact here, not going. There's kind of hitting it with a little bit of attitude in order to get that sound in the playing, and this is why it's so difficult to get anywhere close, because it's all about expression and his personality coming through that guitar and how he's feeling at the time of this performance, and you can't bottle that and just and sell it because everybody would buy it, but you've just got to do the best that you can and try and tap into the same kind of feeling with your playing rather than trying to get all of the notes really pristinely played. You've got to be loose with it. We had a little unison bend in there as well, which was, and then just ending on that first finger, 10th fret here, B string. And there's something about Angus Young with his SG, the tone, when he just holds on one note, you know that it's Angus Young playing the guitar, which sounds crazy because anybody can just hold on one note. But for some reason, it's just the way that that note decays. It's just a sound that you're so used to with AC/DC. And having the confidence, or not the confidence, but the approach of not always applying vibrato to the end of your phrases. So with that rhythm on the A, we've now got this little bounce that we've got in there. Now slow that down. We've got this is coming in from Angus, and Malcolm's playing the, you know, throwing in those downstrokes, that kind of thing. And then he plays through that classic bass line, effectively, of the blues, going, having two picks on each of those notes, and he's still got that little bounce in there, and I'm alternate picking all of that. He might be playing that with all downstrokes. You'll find that if you are playing it with downstrokes, it's going to be quite tough to fit them all in. But it is possible. When he then shifts up to the B, he's sliding up the guitar. So he's got this, like that. So 2nd fret up to the 6th fret on the A string. And it's interesting that he does that because you've got the same notes in this same position if you want them. But he's obviously just shifted up in order to keep exactly the same fingering that he had previously on the A, but now with the B. So as he slides up there, you see here, that's the same fingering as in A. So he just wants to keep that same formation with his fingers. And then right at the end, we get this classic downstrokes here, by the way, and you'll be able to see this if you have a little look at Angus's right hand, the way that he's playing that right hand. Kind of like that, and again, just holding on that last note. Maybe throwing in a tiny little wobble, but again, it's one of those things that you might want to organize this, or you might feel like organizing this with the right hand, but it looks like they're all downstrokes there from Angus, again, putting in a little bit of aggression to that picking. So we've just had some bends coming in there, and just a quick mention of Bon Scott at the front of the stage. What an epic frontman that guy was, and when you're watching a band like this just going for it, that's exactly what you want to see when you're going to see a live band, is the band just leaving everything on stage, and these guys definitely did that. With Bon, I mean, vocally sounding so unique, but his presence and command of the stage was something that was a one-off. Just jumping in here when we've got this bend, and again, minor pentatonic shape 1. Like that, we've got this. So it's that frantic wobble of vibrato that we have at the top that is so distinctive. And same thing on that. That's a little. Went down to the 5th fret with the 1st finger. And then apply that fast vibrato in there. And again. And he's actually playing this with 3rd finger. Like that. With that little wobble. And don't worry too much if, when you're applying that wobble, you go a little bit sharp, because that's what Angus does as well. Getting that. He's not just keeping it there. He'll sometimes. Hopefully you can hear the difference there. I'll exaggerate it a little bit. Vibratoing just a little bit sharp of the note, which again is going to make it stand out. It's going to sound a little bit edgier than just keeping it on the note, because you're forcing people's ears slightly away from where they want to be. So it's going to be a little unsettling, but if there's one band that have a sound that they probably want to unsettle you with, is AC/DC, with the attitude and the aggression in their live performances. But just generally throughout the playing, it's definitely played with intent. It's just classic blues lines that we have in here, where we have that kind of thing, and that little wobble of vibrato. So all of that, even a little bit of blues scale, which might wobble in there as well. Really cool lines here. Something that I want to mention as well is the way that people say, oh, AC/DC is so easy to play, and they just played the same thing every time and they weren't very good, all this kind of stuff. But I think the people that do say that, and if they do play guitar, they're not listening closely enough to get a true appreciation of the tightness of the rhythm playing and the ability of Angus as a lead guitarist, because you can't just sit down and play this kind of stuff without a hell of a lot of practice. And that's before you even factor in running around a stage, shaking your head all over the place and kicking your legs up, sometimes going onto your back, and just playing this sitting down is hard enough, but then putting the whole show aspect into it as well makes it even more impressive. So we've got some really cool lines going on here. We've got a phrase which is repeated, which is, again, minor pentatonic shape 1, but we're having this little bend on that G, the G string here. If you want the note, this is a D. And we're not bending all the way up to our E in terms of like that. It's more of a just pushing up to that semitone, that blue scale. Kind of like that. So we get that. Kind of like that. So don't worry too much about going up that full tone, but he's then transitioning. Sometimes we get this kind of that high E string, kind of like that, and back to the, obviously you can alternate between those, back to the B if you want to, but that, and just throwing it in now and again like that, and just having a little high E string to finish with, as we then work our way down. And you have something like that, a little rundown. And then it'll work its way back up again. Don't worry too much about being really precise with it. Okay, and then we have this little change up to the B again, and we get that. That kind of thing. Again, really cool blues lines going on here. And just getting into this part, we're now just taking so we've got that. Just transitioning between those shapes, and pretty much, I mean, those are double stops, so it just means that we're playing 2 strings like that. So I'm not playing any more than that. I don't think Angus is playing 3 or 4 strings there. It's just these double stops, these 2 strings. That. Then back down again, just up and down. But let's get back into it. Angus is just about to get on top of the amplifier. He's just been up an octave higher now with this. Same principle with our double stops that we had lower down. And it's more of, in terms of the strumming, we haven't got this. So it's not that double time strumming. It sounds like it's more in a triplet kind of feel. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Kind of like that, rather than having to go really fast with it. That kind of thing. We end with our, again, that vibrato right at the top. And we then get into this next section, which is, I think, a little bit of open string action we're about to witness. We had a lot of the B, and it wasn't the open B string. He's actually playing the B on the G string, and he's got that alternate picking sound going on. And when he gets into the lead, again, we've got more of that. But this sounds like we've got more picks in there, so that kind of thing. And the high E string. You can hear that in there occasionally as well. But just great technique here. When you start to put in those extra picks, so I'm going down, 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 up, like that, which makes it a little bit cleaner. But so once you play through our techniques there, we've got a nice little rundown there, and again that. And I'm trying to think of the notes that went on there, but it's pretty much going to be our minor pentatonic shape 1. And don't worry too much about being really precise with it. It's just about throwing these runs together and just following the right kind of feel. I mean, because even if you're playing with the right feel and you don't get exactly the right notes, it's still going to sound better than trying to play the notes really pristinely and not getting the same feel to it. You want to try and play in the same way with the same kind of personality and approach that great players play with in order to express yourself through your guitar. So we've just had this open string segment on the B. So we've got this, and a lot of people will start to recognize this from another AC/DC song, but it's not exactly the same. We have our, and he's actually picking all of these. He starts off very slowly with that. And then starts to gradually speed it up. Something like that. I'll have to practice that run a little bit to get it really fast. But it's I don't know why I want to put in a couple of picks there. I don't know why my muscle memory wants to do that. It must be something else that I've learned to play in the past. But again, it's just alternate picking that is really accurate. And like I said before in this video, those people that say, oh, it's really easy to play, just try and play some of this stuff. Even just Thunderstruck, the intro to that, playing that properly. I know that a lot of people do pull-offs, Hammer-Ons and Pull-Offs, but it's all picked So try playing through that riff, picking it all, and you'll realize that it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice. Just to mention that the very last section here, we have the Hammer-Ons and Pull-Offs, like that, which is just hammering your fingers onto the guitar without picking, because obviously he's got his hand in the air, so that you want to make sure that you get a good pick with that little finger. Kind of like that. Just as a final word on the playing, what I love about Angus Young's playing is the fact that he throws in so much technique, but also just great blues lines. The fact that he's sometimes getting into that kind of thing. He'll always throw in these almost Chuck Berry type lines, and then throw in lots of technique and just melt your face with some alternate picking. But he's got all of that technique in there, as well as obviously a lot of blues, rock and roll influences going on, and he just seamlessly blends them together. And you could argue that with AC/DC, it's such a heavier sound that you don't think that any of these blues lines would work particularly well, but they definitely do. His tone is so biting, but it's actually quite clean. He doesn't have any delay on there, no excessive reverb. So you get a real appreciation of his technique on the fretboard because of the amount of picking that he's doing and the way that it just cuts across. There's definitely nowhere to hide with this kind of tone. Even though it sounds like heavy music or heavy tones all the way, you have to factor in the fact that Malcolm's playing rhythm guitar in the background with a heavy tone as well. So you get that doubling up. So hopefully this video won't get blocked. I did want to do an AC/DC video where I did have the guitar out just to point out a few things, but it's definitely a lot more complicated than it seems. When you're looking at things in detail, you'll find how precise the timing is from a rhythm perspective, how tight these guys were in the late 70s with his performance, 1978 was it, that I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Super tight as a band, ultimate showmanship across the whole band, but then just great technical ability. Like I said, if you're looking at this in detail, you'll understand exactly how difficult it is to replicate. Anyway, thank you guys for requesting an AC/DC video. I hope you guys did enjoy it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!